told them that the jury, they could impose whatever amount of money they thought fit between the 100 and 500, but if they were satisfied with a $100 fine, then they didn't need to come back with an amount, and he would impose the minimum sentence. It was the exact same fine that liquor convictions carried in the state. That was during Prohibition, and so it was handled like well, it was just like a bootlegger case.
Who got the $100?
Well, the $100. Brian had said when he arrived in town that he was there not to try John Scopes, but to defend the people's law. He was a majoritarian, believed in populism, and the people wanted this law. He was there to defend the law, and if Scopes was convicted, that he would put up the money, that he would pay the $100. But in the end, it was the Baltimore Sun that got there first. And so H.L. Mencken, who represented the Baltimore Sun, actually paid the $100, but Bryan had offered to.
Clarence Darrow was 68.
68.
William Jennings Bryan, 65. And what happened to him after the trial?
Well, it was terribly hot. That's where the name Summer for the Gods comes. It was terribly hot. The one impression that everybody carries back from the trial is the heat. East Tennessee in the mountains is usually not all that hot, but it was over 100 degrees, record heat wave. There were no fans even in the courtroom. Bryan was a diabetic. It was very stressful with the heat, and of course he went through the strenuous ordeal of the interrogation by Clarence Darrow, and he was just tired out. He was planning to give a nationwide series of speeches that had been planned to be his closing speech at the Scopes trial. He gave it twice in Tennessee, in 2 other small towns in Tennessee. So it was then a week after the trial, and he'd given it. The trial ended on Monday. Well, finally ended on Tuesday. He gave the speech on Thursday and Friday. He spent Saturday preparing the speech for publication as a booklet at a press down in Chattanooga, and then went back to Dayton, planning to leave the following day. And he died in his, taking a nap on Sunday afternoon. He died in his sleep.
What happened to him after he died?
Well, he was a national hero. He was carried back in a special train car to burial at Arlington National Cemetery, which many people thought was ironic since he was a pacifist and had opposed entry to the war, World War I. But it was like the train that carried Lincoln home. The people just lined the train tracks by the hundreds of thousands to watch the train go by of William Jennings Bryan. Not the William Jennings Bryan in the Scopes trial, the William Jennings Bryan that they remembered, the great commoner who had run 3 times for president, who was their spokesman of the people. And at every town he stopped in, the people would file by the casket and look at it by the thousands. On the way back from Dayton to Washington D.C., and then he lay in state here in Washington D.C., and then he was carried by senators. 6 senators were his pallbearers, and other governors and leaders served as honorary pallbearers. He was carried down to Arlington National Cemetery, where he was buried under a speak. You can go down there now. It's like a speaker's podium, like an oak tree. I think it's the stump of an oak tree where an orator would stand, and it says Bryan, and there's this stump of an oak tree but nobody's on it, of course, because Bryan has fallen.
Now, you live in a town, Athens, Georgia. There are a couple of other people there that are well known as writers and historians. William McFeely, who did the U.S. Grant book, and also Emory Thomas, who's been on this program, did the Robert E. Lee book.
Yeah.
Now, getting a Pulitzer and all this, does that put you right there in their category?
Well, I've been their neighbor. I don't know if I quite live up to their category yet, but they've both been very pleased. They're good friends. They're also in the history department.
Where's this?
Oh, I'm trying to type there, I guess. It's sort of a close-up. It's my office where I actually, small little room up above my, you can see me sort of bending of it. Oh, you see me opening the door. I was inspired by Hawthorne to have a little room where there I go, to keep my kids out.
She thinks I'm not going to be able to get out of here.
I had to make it heavy. I built this myself, and I had to make it heavy because I didn't want the kids to possibly be able to get it out, because I didn't want them to fall down the steps. I just have my word processor up there. I actually do my writing in our home out in the West Coast, up in Washington State, up near the San Juan Islands. That's where I was from before I went to to Athens, Georgia, where I teach. But I write longhand. I write on yellow legal tablets. I'm a lawyer, remember. I write these yellow legal tablets, all in longhand in pencil, with erasers everywhere, since I'm always erasing. I write with just a pad and a dictionary, because I think I have to look up every word to make sure it has the right nuances. So I write with a... and so I had this all written out longhand, one chapter in every yellow pad. And then I bring it back, and I'm actually a very quick typist, and I type it into the word processor, so that I happen to... that's the word processor I use.
Go over the degrees again. Where'd you get your law degree?
Harvard.
Your PhD at University of Wisconsin?
Yes.
In what area?
History of science, which is a separate from the history of... It's in a separate department from history. It focuses on the history of the development of scientific ideas. It's part of intellectual history.
How about your undergrad?
I was split between Williams College and University of Michigan. My degree's from Williams. That's where I knew William Jennings. That's where I knew Jim Burns. And then Michigan, where I took sciences.
Now, how has the Pulitzer changed your life?
Well, I'm still trying to get used to that. It was, as I said, it was surprising. Well, it helped get me on this show, which is a tremendous honor for me, and it was great fun. I get to go up and meet Katharine Graham in a couple weeks because, of course, she's going to also be getting a Pulitzer. It has, but I think the best thing is, well, the two best things. One is all my old friends from college, from high school, even from grade school have been calling me up and telling me how happy they are for me. And it's just great to hear from them and to know that somehow this has made them happy. The other thing it's made different is that now more people are reading my book, and I don't care whether they buy it. I hope they take it out of the library. But I like to write, and I like to put words together, and I think there's a good story here. I think it has something to say, and I'm just pleased that more people are going to read it.
Now, one of the things that you mentioned just before we opened the microphones on this is that there are some original photographs in this book that haven't been seen before, and almost all of them say Bryan College Archives. Where is Bryan College? Well,
Bryan College was founded when William Jennings Bryan died in Dayton, Tennessee. They raised a memorial fund to build a college in his honor. It was originally called William Jennings Bryan Memorial University, but then no university ever formed. It remained a small college. And they have a collection of some original photographs that they were willing to let me use. It was very kind of them. Most of the famous photographs are owned by, I think it's Bettman Archives, and they've been widely seen. People know those. That famous picture with Clarence Darrow smoking and William Jennings Bryan with a fan. That's probably the most famous that appears. And I wanted to use some new photos. I thought I had new archival materials that made the book different than anything that had been written before. Since I had new archival materials, I had new historical research, I had a new time perspective that is a greater look back, and you could put it in better perspective than earlier writers. And so I thought it'd be good to use new photographs.
And is that college still there?
Oh yes, it's still there.
How big is it?
Oh, I don't know. Probably about 1,000. It's a fundamentalist school. It remains a Christian college up in Tennessee, and I think it's actually bigger, and it's doing as good as it's ever done. I think it's doing fine.
There are a bunch of other little things you mentioned in the book I want to ask you about is like the Scopes Trial Museum. Where's that?
The Scopes Trial Museum. Well, they still use the old courthouse, and they've taken the the basement of the courthouse, first floor of the courthouse. It's somewhat between those two, and they've turned it into a museum. They did this trial for publicity, and it was a success. Not only did it make them famous then, but it's the only reason they're famous now. The town attracts people because of its Scopes connection. This trial has resonated through America for 75 years. They have a museum, they have a festival every year, and they got a college out of it.
What happens at the
festival? They have actors recreating part of the trial. I hear they're working on a new script that beefs it up a little bit, but they take parts of the transcript, of the actual transcript of the trial, rather than the Inherit the Wind version, and they reenact parts of the trial. And I think they also have some displays and different speakers.
Now, Inherit the Wind, Broadway musical and a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Who starred in the movie?
The movie were Tracy and Frederick Marsh, and then H.L. Mencken's role was played by Gene Kelly, and the judge was played by Morgan, Henry Morgan, the person who was in MASH later. And then, of course, the role with Scopes was played by, the person who was the husband in Bewitched later. Now, I can't think of his name, but Elizabeth Montgomery's husband.
You say in the back that, in the footnotes, that Burt Lancaster got the Academy that year.
Yeah, Elmer Gantry, which is interesting because it was another sort of anti-fundamentalist movie, and he was